Welcome, everybody, to Mind in America. Today's guest is George Byers, with a vast amount of experience in Wyoming and New Mexico and uranium and rare earths. And we're talking about mining in Wyoming and his experiences on September 11th. Welcome, George.
You're quite welcome. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Janet, for the invite.
Now, for the benefit of people listening, George Byers, in the mining industry a long time. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, a long time means since 1976, after graduate school, and before that, some time in the U.S. Army as an infantry officer. We ended up with the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, the BLM, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. At that time, as opposed to today, the U.S. government thought coal was a fine thing. The government had identified 12 coal regions within the United States that they were going to focus on maximizing coal production, coal-fired power, building railroads, and one of those regions was just south of you, Janet, in the San Juan Basin of Northwest New Mexico. So the Albuquerque office of the Bureau of Land Management was responsible for that, and I was kind of the first person on board. We ended up with a 26-person team to do actually a gigantic multi-volume environmental impact statement that encompassed 12 coal mines, a railroad, and a power plant. And as opposed to today, we did all that in less than 2 years. Wow. It would take centuries today with all the litigation and issues that have developed with opposition to the NEPA process and to coal mining and so forth. But we got it done shortly. At that time, one of the companies involved was Public Service Company of New Mexico. Has this big San Juan generating station there west of Farmington. They also had federal coal leases at San Juan, and then south of there, about 35 miles south of Farmington, along the Fruitland Formation. I ended up going to work for them. My job was coal mine permitting, as well as just interaction with the state government and the federal government. I was with P&M for 3 years, and then Santa Fe Pacific hired me also to do coal mine permitting. And Santa Fe, most people are familiar with the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe Railway, the railroad of legend. But across the southern tier of the United States, from Kansas City basically to Los Angeles, the predecessor to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe was a company called Santa Fe Pacific Railroad Company, and the government, as was its custom to encourage development of the American West, granted the railroads, the Southern Pacific, the Santa Fe Pacific, the Union Pacific, the Northern Pacific. It granted those major railroads alternate square miles or alternate sections of land on either side of the railroad. The idea being the railroad would then sell those sections of land off, or maybe lease or mine the minerals, or harvest the timber, whatever, that was on those lands in order to pay for the railroad construction. So Santa Fe had the southern tier, and it basically, where the land grant began was Albuquerque, and it extended to Kingman, Arizona, to Needles, Arizona, on the Colorado River. So Santa Fe had originally had, I think about 14 million acres. They had sold a lot of it off, but kept much of it. And we still had about 4.5 million between Santa Fe and Needles. And we were going to develop and we did successfully develop and build a railroad to it in the San Juan Basin, northwest of Grants, New Mexico, called the Lee Ranch Mine. And the Lee Ranch Mine, we successfully permitted it and got the railroad built. There was some adventure involved with that. And that mine operated. Santa Fe ultimately did an asset exchange with the parent company of Peabody Energy. Peabody ended up operating the mine until I think Lee Ranch has just shut down in the last couple of years, but it mined over 300 million tons of coal and employed about 310 people in the Grants, New Mexico area over that time.
So, and what timeline was that? From what years?
Well, they had begun the exploration. So Santa Fe had made a decision. They looked at the success of the Union Pacific and the Northern Pacific with coal and oil and gas and uranium on their properties, on their land grants in Montana and in Wyoming principally. So they took a look and said, we've got a lot of uranium here. The original uranium discovery was made on Santa Fe land just west of Grants, New Mexico by the Navajo Patty Martinez back around 1950. So they said, if that can happen and other people are now mining it, let's do it ourselves. So they had begun doing coal exploration in the early 1970s. They realized by 76 or 7 that we have a commercial coal deposit here. The problem was it was on that checkerboard land pattern. But we got the mine permitted, coal mining and mine construction, the silos and everything else. The railroad got built and first coal was delivered in 1980, spring of 84.
Wow.
So, but we had to also consolidate that land pattern to employ a dragline operation, which is much more economical. You don't leave coal in the ground, you get it all. You get all of the resource that way. So we engaged with a large land and coal property exchange with the federal government that took place between beginning about 83, and it was concluded in 1988, I believe. The federal government ended up with a very large leasable tract of solid federal coal, which Santa Fe and Peabody later leased from the federal government and mined. Santa Fe ended up with 2 large contiguous tracts of private coal, which we also mined. So that helped, that land exchange did 2 things. It helped create a very long life coal mine, and as part of the exchange, we were asked to include some additional Santa Fe lands surrounding Chaco, at that time, Chaco Canyon National Monument. And it expanded Chaco considerably. It is now known as Chaco Culture National Historical Park. So we were able to help the federal government protect some very world-class prehistoric ruins, Anasazi ruins in the San Juan Basin, as well as put 310 people to work for about 30 years.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the 300 plus people that you employed. A lot of these people were out of work uranium miners that you turned into coal miners, correct?
That's exactly right. We were, unfortunately for the uranium industry, it had suddenly begun to lose a great number of employees after the Chernobyl incident in Ukraine. And we were just about to begin hiring. And we found ourselves blessed with a an abundance of incredibly talented people who liked living in that region and they wanted to stay there. Um, and in order to avoid some claims of favoritism, we actually worked with the New Mexico Department of Human Resources, and we allowed them to do the initial screening of employees. And so we wouldn't be charged with favoritism or anything. And they gave us the top three, and then we interviewed those for just dozens and dozens of positions, everything from electricians to equipment operators, you name it. We ended up with a tremendous workforce.
Amazing. And I don't think there's, I often say that the mining or extraction industry is not very good at marketing because they don't promote the value that and the wealth creation that they create in rural America. But exactly what you did.
Well, the other thing that people overlook with mining, and maybe any natural resource, has to do with just the 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 pay grades that miners can achieve. And the term we used was family wage employment. In other words, uh, one lady or one gentleman could come to work for us, and the other spouse could stay home and raise the family. That this wasn't a type of a job where two people had to struggle with two separate incomes. One person could do a very good job of supporting a family on one miner's or one maintenance guy or one dragline operator's job, and that's what's so neat about the mining industry. No matter what commodity you're talking about, we have family wage jobs in rural America.
I love it. And there are some, it frustrates me to see us farm out all our resource production to third world countries, underdeveloped countries, when I know we do it right here, and I know we create jobs, and it just I love what you did. I really do, and I think you said it perfectly.
Well, you'll see this when you go to Mine Expo or when you go to PDA in Toronto. You will see, in addition to people with equipment or software packages to sell to the industry, you will have companies there. You'll have a booth from Ecuador. You'll have a booth from Angola. You'll have a booth from Namibia. They want the mining industry because they understand that you guys you pay very well, you train very well, you're very safe.
Mhm.
And not only that, you bring a great deal of capital investment into our country, and we need all this.
Yeah,
And we understand in our little countries spread around the world what that type of spinoff can mean. It just grows and grows and grows. So we want the mining industry there, and it's too bad that that America right now has lost that type of vision,
yeah,
and more our mining production is drifting overseas.
yeah. And the argument that they use often is looking back at what the mining industry was 50, 60 years ago, 100 years ago. There's absolutely no comparison anymore.
No, it's a much different thing, and I would venture that. Well, I know this for a fact. The mining industry in New Mexico, coal is going down. Uranium is essentially all gone. The major mining in New Mexico today, aside from sand and gravel operations, is copper in the southwest and potash in the southeast.
Yeah.
So that's where the focus is in New Mexico today.
And meanwhile, uranium resources in New Mexico are uh, I've been told the best in the country.
In terms of pounds in the ground, I think Wyoming and New Mexico arm wrestle all the time about who's got the most. It's a few pounds either way, depending on who is counting it. But both of those states are at the very top. The state you may know better right now is Texas. Texas is probably in third place, but New Mexico is right there. You used to have a number of uranium mills. In fact, America used to have 26 operating uranium mills, milling conventionally mined ore. We've gone from 26 mills to 1 today, and that's Energy Fuels White Mesa Mill in Blanding, Utah. Mm-hmm. So we've gone from 26 to 1. So when you have 4% of your original industrial base, that's not a good thing.
Yeah. What drew you to the mining industry?
Well, it was just an opportunity. I'm surprised I didn't end up in oil and gas, but I ended up in mining instead. But it was just, I liked the American West, even though I'd grown up in North Mississippi. My parents traveled a lot in the summers. My dad was able to do that, had family out west. And when I first came out, I loved it out here, and I said, this is where I'm going to be. Yeah. So it was just the opportunity, and here I am.
I understand the love of the American West. I grew up in Canada, and I thought my dream was to either live in Colorado, Wyoming, or Texas. So I feel I live in 2 of those states. I work in 3 of those states. I'm pretty much there, I think.
Well, yeah, and I've been able to work in, it's easier to list the states I have not worked in west of the 100th meridian. And that is, even though I live here in Idaho, I have never had to work on a project in Idaho, and I've never worked on a project in Oregon or in Hawaii, but every other state, including Alaska, I've been involved with projects, including in Texas as well.